The Connection Show. Inspiring hope, health, healing. Connecting the dots of your story and transforming your life. Sponsored by Braveheart Workshops. Live with Jill Reynolds.
The Connection Show. Inspiring hope, health, and healing. Sponsored by Braveheart Workshops, live with Jill Reynolds. And joining me today is Cynda Hunter. Welcome to the show, Cynda.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are so blessed that you have decided to come on. And right before we begin, I just like to break for just a moment to let the audience know about an amazing event coming to Branson, Missouri in the beautiful Ozark Mountains, which will be August 19th and the 20th at Yakov's Theater. It's called Resilient Bravehearts for Such a Time as This. So I'd love for the audience to be able to just see where the event is and the website to be able to go online and get your tickets now. It's for all women because all women are Queen Esthers for such a time as this. So we hope you'll join us in Branson in August. So with all that, Cynda, would you take the audience on a journey to little Cynda's life and take us from being a little girl through junior high, high school, junior high, and bring us to the current state of where you are today, if you could take us on that journey?
Yes, sure. I was born in Keys Mountain, North Carolina. It's a very small town, 30 miles west of Charlotte. I grew up there, had two brothers. We were, I think we were more of a poverty family. I think so, because we always lived in more of the poor sides of town. My father was, he was a mechanic for the city of Kings Mountain. My mother, she worked in a knitting mill. And we always were the kids, I guess, that just were always home. You know, my older brother always watched us growing up. But kind of trying to think back and see where it is I would like to, start with it, because I think, coming up in I know that my childhood taught me so much, but, all of us have a story. So with mine is, my father was an alcoholic. I think he was married before my mom. And I think that's why he divorced her, because he was an alcoholic, and the woman he married, I think he was only married like a couple of months or so, and she divorced him because of that. But he married my mother. My mother was very pretty. She's a very beautiful, beautiful woman. They were married, I think they were married about 25 years or so. And he started getting really abusive with her. I think he started drinking, and he became very abusive to her. He never was abusive to us. He never was physically abusive to us, but he was to my mom. It was really hard for us as children. It was very, very hard for my mother. I'd hear her pray all the time to the Lord. She would always pray. My grandmother was a very spiritual woman. She prayed all the time. That was on my mother's side. And my father, he was always gone. He was never there. He would always leave on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and come back on Sunday. My mother worked during the week, so we were usually there by ourselves, very unattended. But as for me, as I got older and went into high school, I really became good at sports. So I got into sports a lot. Softball, cheerleading, track, diving, gymnastics, track. There was just so much that I can remember that I got into. But my older brother did not. He became very isolated. And my younger brother, he began actually becoming a drug addict at a very small age. So he began to really stay gone a lot at the age of like 12 or 13 or 14. And we did have praying family members who prayed for us a lot, who always checked on us to make sure we were okay, and would bring us food if we need food and those type of things. But now looking back at my life, I'm really surprised that a little girl like me really actually survived that type of childhood, Jill. I'm telling you, I really should not be standing here today. I really should not. I think I was probably, remember I was 8 years old. I think I walked like 2 miles at 9 or 10 o'clock at night by myself from a friend's house. She would walk me halfway and I'd have to walk the rest of the way home. I think, yeah, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And I just think that God's hand was on me, that I'm still here today, that I wasn't a kidnapped little girl, because my mother would take off and my father would take off and nobody be there to watch us. And my grandmother would have to come and get us, or our aunts would come and get us and take us to spend the night with them. That lasted for a long time.
And it had to be extremely lonely. I really am so grateful, Cynda, that you shared that part of your story, because I really do believe story really connects each other. And I too, at 6, 7 years old, was a lockheed child. My parents divorced. My mom worked as a cocktail waitress, and we'd stay out with men all night. So I totally get your story, where I'd call my grandma at work and say, Grandma, how do you make a meatloaf, or how do you make a pot roast? And I remember the TV was our babysitter. And so I really identified, but what it brings up is just the total loneliness of that childhood, that loneliness in the spirit that you don't even really understand till later on in life.
It's true, because you didn't. And then when I became a teenager, and there's so much more to it. So I actually got a phone call from one of my family members who was really frustrated with me and got mad at me because some of the things that I kind of exposed about our family. And you're going to get that. You're going to get that. And which they didn't believe the truth that was to it, but actually the person confirmed it. And no, sometimes people don't want to believe the things that happen behind closed doors in family. There's so many family secrets, and but as getting older, as a teenager, I really lost my way. I lost my way. I never got into drugs, and I never was a drinker. I never was, because my dad was an alcoholic, and I seen what it did to him. So I did not want to be an alcoholic. My brother was a drug addict, so I didn't want to be like that. I knew I didn't. My older brother never was. He became very isolated. He started having blackouts and those type of things. But come to find out that he was raped twice. He was raped twice at 9 years old by our cousin, a male. Yeah, and it's. I wonder what was. We didn't know what was wrong with him. We didn't know he went on to be like that till he was probably in his 40s, and I never knew why he acted the way he did. But when he began to talk about it and felt like there wasn't nothing wrong with him, he changed. He became so independent, so strong, and he faced that person, and they really gave him a hard time. But my brother's doing so good. I'm so proud of him. After facing that, happened to him twice, and he's doing really good. I'm just so happy for him. But for me to hear that in my family just felt like, God, this is my family, and this is my brother. So it hurt me as well. And but he's doing really good. And my younger brother, he's still having a hard time. He's still having a lot of struggles. He's probably 50, 55. He's still having a lot of struggles, but I see him starting to come around with that. But it was what we were raised up in. It was unbelievable what we were raised up in. We just didn't, like my mother had to.
I feel like we were neighbors and lived the same life, because my first stepfather was an alcoholic, bisexual bigamist who abused my brother and myself. And then my next stepfather was an alcoholic who dressed up in women's clothes. And and so we have so much similarities. And that's why, I really believe when God told me to do this show, and he gave me the tagline, Hope, Health, and Healing, that our hope has to be in him. Our health has to be for our body, to allow the Holy Spirit to reside in us freely. And our healing has to be from our mind, from anxiety, depression, sexual abuse, addictions. And so I really am grateful, Cynda, to meet you, because just for this just short moment, I see like we were almost sisters living in the same house.
I do. I feel like, because I always think my story's unique. Nobody's ever been there, but then here's someone else who's been there. It's like, and they understand. They understand what it's like. And probably the next thing I want to share, I don't know if this relates to you, but there was some sexual trauma from my father with me, and I was sexually abused by my own father, and that really, because to me, from what I've what I feel like the Lord has shown me is a father is the identity in a home of the leadership of a man, and your mother would be your nurturer. So I'm like, so I'm all confused now. I'm like, wait a minute, why would my father be that attracted to me? And as I got older, I felt like, I heard that he did this to some women that he dated their children. And so I knew, I was like, okay, so there's nothing wrong with me. And I didn't confess it to him that I remembered, or not really confess. I didn't tell him. I remembered until he was laying on his deathbed with cancer. And I know he heard me. And I just told him I forgave him for it. And, and for him to be raised up, because his mother died giving birth to his baby brother, which, was next after him. And his father gave him to his uncle, took off and left him. So I think there was some sexual abuse there that my dad never talked about, because I seen some of the characteristics of it and I heard some stories. But for that to happen to me, that really threw me off, Jill, with my identity of who I was and relationships. I struggled with relationships for years of even having a friend, to even know how to be a friend to someone, because I saw so much betrayal in my family. And
well,
I said,
what it does to a young woman, because I identify my believe it or not, my abuser was my mom. When my stepfather and my mom would have the fights, she would come in the bedroom and sleep with me nude in our twin bed. And it wasn't until I got older that my therapist said that was sexual abuse, Jill. And and the mother, like you said, is the nurturer. So I didn't have the nurturing. The father kind of gives you that image of what God is, God the Father. But what it does to young women, let's go down this path if you're willing, is it really affects your body image. You look in the mirror and you see your body image, and it's distorted after abuse has taken place. Can you relate to that?
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. That's worded so well. I like that.
Yeah. So
so
thank you for your transparency on that and sharing. So when was it that you discovered this? I mean, did you go to therapy? Did God reveal it? Had the memories been kind of with PTSD, post-traumatic stress? Many times we go into disassociation, so the memories don't come back until years later.
You see, because I love that you say that. My brother and I had a lot of conversations, because he came to stay with me for a couple of years. And when you have drug addicts, there's lies and there's theft. So, but he never did anything like that with me. He was always good here. But so so I trusted him, and he came here and we were talking, and he would tell me things that happened in my childhood. And I was like, I don't remember that. I mean, I really thought that, maybe he just thinks it happened. And it's really, like you said, it's just unreal that I can't remember what he actually broke down and described to me. I'm like, wow, that happened to us. I don't know. Like you said, I guess that's where it just got blacked out in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm glad
our body and our mind, God gives us the ability to disassociate so we can survive. And sometimes people think that that's a negative, but I've come to believe as a Christian, some of that stuff is not negative parts. God gives us protection sometimes that we don't even understand. And so, as crazy as it may sound, Cynda, I think sometimes drug addiction or alcoholism can be the protector to keep us alive so you don't commit suicide. Because if the abuse is so severe, sometimes you need to medicate for a time.
Yeah.
Like where it says, for such a time as this, till you can get to a level you can balance off to process it to get well.
That is really good to think on, because, we don't really know why. Like, well, to me, I went through therapy a lot, and I really liked her. She really helped me. I think it was like 5 or 6 years. And while I was married, my husband didn't even know. He thought I was going to therapy about my childhood. I was actually going to therapy about my marriage, about him. He didn't know that. But as like you're saying, it's and I never turned to drugs. I never turned to alcohol. I didn't do any of that. But I was so self-conscious about my physical body that I was obsessed with working out and what I wore. And if I never was, what was it, anorexic? I never was anything like that. I always kept this perfect weight, where I was always making sure I looked in the mirror and I was attractive. I don't know why I did that, but I did it up until probably about 10 years ago. And I said, you know what? I'm going to love me the way I am. I said, I do not have to be obsessive and so compulsive in these throughout my day. About I didn't eat this, I did eat this, and this is going to happen, and jumping on the scale, and oh, here's a wrinkle, and there's a wrinkle. I've learned that this is who I am, and beauty within, which God gives us, can always be an outward appearance. It can, and it is. So I've learned to live with that. And I can't believe it took me till I'm 58. I can't believe it took me until I was like 48 years old to see that.
Well, and again, just so you can hear this and the audience can, you said, oh, I wasn't an anorexic or anything like that. Well, I'm a recovered person with eating disorders. And so there are several eating disorders that you mentioned that you might not even aware you had. One is called restrictive avoidance disorder, where you restrict and avoid certain foods so that you won't get sick or gain weight. And then obsessive exercising is an eating disorder where you obsessively exercise to burn off every calorie that you're inputting. And then obsessive weight, going on the scale, is that obsession. So it's actually an eating disorder, Cynda, which is a disease like cancer. And so sometimes people get to a place where they're like, why can't I change? Why can't I change? Well, you got a disease. And the disease is taken over the mind, and it needs healing.
I agree, and it's because I always thought, but like I watched what I ate, very, very healthy, really, really healthy. Because I'm a cancer survivor. I had cervical cancer. My daughter was 2 years old, and I remember going to the oncologist and him telling me I can't have any more children, and I need the surgery now. I'm like, wow, and I only missed my GYNOB appointment by maybe 4 or 5 months, maybe. I got them yearly. And I just guess it just slipped my mind in that. And I was like, wow, and if I would not have went, I don't know where I would be today, but I did go. But the fact is that he told me when I came to the surgery, when I was in the hospital, it was Presbyterian. No. I'm sorry. At Carolina's Medical Center, I was on an oncologist for. And so the next day after surgery, so I was cut from hip to hip with like maybe 90 or 100 stitches or so. And so the next day I was up and I would walk down to get me something from the cafeteria, and the red lights go off in the hospital. And it was patient alert, and I'm just looking up there. I got my tray and the women are just looking at me. I'm like, I would like to buy some food. And then 2 nurses come and grab a hold of my arm. And I said, what are you doing? I said, well, I came down here to eat. I'm hungry. They said, how did you get up? I said, I stood up. They said, no, you can't get up. And they said, you're not supposed to be. How did you get up out of that bed? Who walked you down here? I said, I walked me down here. They said, it had to be the hand of God to get you up out of that bed. I said, well, I don't know. I said, but I got up. But whenever I was talking to him, the oncologist, he said, I feel like, and I'll tell you 2 pieces to this. He said, I feel like that with you getting up like you have is because of how healthy you are. Like I said, I don't know why I did. I just felt like I needed to stay so healthy. I don't know what it was that drove me to eat all the healthy foods, stay this weight for some reason. He said, because he said, it's really hard. He said, to come through this surgery. And he said, and another thing, he said, I think I'd opened up my eyes the next morning and I saw all these white robes, and I grabbed a hold of myself and I was like this. I said, am I in heaven? I thought I was in heaven. And the oncologist looks at me. He said, you are a miracle patient. He said, nobody has ever gotten up from this. He said, we just think you are a miracle patient. So we have made you our study, and we're going to document your surgery because this has never, ever happened. He said,
so they brought all the residents in to witness you.
There was 10 of them. And they were just looking at me. He said, and he sat me down and said, I hope I didn't scare you after I'd gotten out of the hospital. He said, but we've never witnessed that before. He said, you were the first patient to ever. He said, maybe because you were so young. I was like, no, it's because I had been prayed for. Those women came up there and prayed for me. They laid hands on me before I went into surgery. And, oh yeah, they did. And it just, I can't believe it. I'm shocked. I've never had chemotherapy, radiation, and nothing ever else, ever. That's it. I went and had surgery and came home. And he just said, he is just blown away. He said it was a miracle. And I do believe that. And he said, it's probably because healthy as you were. But I was like, well, I was really obsessive, with eating. So he didn't really know.
And you know what? Just so the audience knows, today there's actually a medical name for that. It's called orthorexia. And orthorexia is similar to anorexia, but what it is, Cynda, it is where you become so obsessed with clean eating that you're actually afraid to eat the hospital food or restaurant food or family food because it might not be clean enough. And so your brain goes into this like, sure, we should eat healthy foods. However, if you have a piece of cake or a cookie once in a while, you're not going to die. And so people think, oh, if I have one thing off of this food plan, I'm going to die. And that's what an orthorexia believes, to the point that they're scared to death to go anywhere in public to eat. So
and I just watched what I ate. But like you said, I think to me was, I felt like I had this attractiveness about me. I didn't want to be, because my mother was always so beautiful. I mean, she was just always so pretty, and I never felt like I was in competition with my mom, but I always wanted to stay this certain body shape so I could stay attractive. And then whenever I got married to my husband, I think he was more flirtatious, and he was always attracted to women's bodies, and he always say certain gestures that I didn't like. So I even worked harder to make myself stay even more attractive. And then after we were married about 17 or 18 years, I said, I quit. I said, if this is something that my husband wants, then he can go ahead, because I'm not going to do this no more. I said, I love myself just like I am, and I'm not going to do it. I'll do what I need to do to have a healthy body and eat what I feel like I need to eat, but I'm not going to be, like you were saying, obsessed about this anymore, so I can make him happy. I'm not going to do that. So I quit.
Now, how old were you, Cynda, when you got married?
So Paul and I think I was, we were married in 2003. So, and I was married before. With my daughter's father. We were married about 7 or 8 years. And then we divorced. And I married Paul, my husband, 5 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't want to get married.
But your first marriage, how old were you? Like 18, 19, 20 when you married?
When I married him, 26.
Okay. So a question I have to ask of you, when women or men have been sexually abused, one of the manifestations I have found that occurs is promiscuity. Did you go through a period of time, junior high, high school, up until the 24, of being promiscuous after the molestation from your dad, or did you not go through that at all in your life?
I got into sports.
You got sports.
I think what I've done was to, went to state championships and that kind of thing. I was really good at it. I think I did that because it kept me away from home. Yeah, it kept me away from home. And then whenever I got 18, I moved out, and I stayed for a long time. And then I met my daughter's father. I think I was probably 23, 24, and we got married 2 years later. And we stayed married for about 7 years. I think about 7 years. And then I was by myself for about 5 years, and I had met Paul a year later. But I told him I didn't want to get married. I just wanted to raise my daughter, and I wanted to do what I felt like I needed to do and work on myself. And then I ended up marrying an alcoholic. So
and you just had the one child? You just have the one daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. And see, I didn't know he was an alcoholic. I didn't know he was drinking and hiding it from me. I didn't know that. I had no idea. It took me 4 or 5 years to know he was an alcoholic.
Wow.
After I married. Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea.
Wow. Well, let's pause for 1 second, because there's one part of your story that you had in your bio I'd like to go back to.
Okay.
Is your accident at the swimming pool. Tell us what happened there and what was going on.
Well, I did diving, and I was seeking out professional diving is what I wanted to do. And I was really good at it because I had actually entered in a lot of contests, a lot of diving contests, and had a lot of gold ribbons and gold medals and everything from traveling around diving. I loved it. I think I was 12, 13 or 14 years old or so. I started at a very young age. Like I said, my mother, and they just drop us off at the swimming pool we'd be by ourselves, 5 and 6 years old. And so, but I was self-taught. I taught myself how to dive. And there was a man who came around to our city swimming pool and said, tell that little girl to come here. He said, I'd like to see if she wants to take some diving lessons. And I told him, I said, I was just telling him, my brother, we were saying, we don't have the money for that. He said, I'll train you for free. So at the swimming pool, there was a lot of the children there with me, and he taught me. And I was going into professional diving. I was on the high diving board just one day, not in no lesson or anything. And there was these older guys who were friends of my brothers was shaking the diving board. And when they did, I fell backward onto the concrete and busted the back of my head. And I was in the hospital. I'm glad you asked this. I was in the hospital for a week. So I remember laying there and on the hospital bed, and I heard the doctor, because, sometimes when you go in and out of things, you can hear an echo of a voice or catch a few words. I heard, she's got a 40% chance of living this, maybe 30% chance. And I heard my mother just start screaming, crying. And then I smelled this alcohol smell of my dad laying on the bed because he was an alcoholic. And I could just smell him just cry. That's all I remember. And then I just closed my eyes. And then they said they was waiting on the ambulance to come and pick me up at the local doctor's office where my mother took me. I was nurse back then. And so my mom said, I'm not waiting. So my mother just picks me up and carries me to her back of her car and lays me in the back of her seat and drives me over to the hospital herself.
Wow.
And yes, and so then they, my grandmother had called the hospital and told them they were going to send me to Presbyterian in Charlotte. So I went straight to Presbyterian. So beside me was a woman, and she had these clamps in her throat, and she was probably 16 years old. And then you shared a room. And so Jill, this is amazing to me. So I remember her, she said, she was just laying there beside me. She could talk, Esther, she could talk like a whisper. And she would help me. She'd help me up out of bed, and then she would help feed me. When my parents went there, she would go down the hall. She could go get them. And I don't know what this was with the clamps. I don't know what she had done, but she showed me this macrame. And I remember her praying for me. And after 3 days being in the hospital, I woke up and I looked and I seen two nurses there. They were taking the clamps out. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm going home. And I started crying because she was beside me the whole entire time. I said, no, where are you going? She said, well, she goes, I'm going to the convent here. She said, I've dedicated my life to the Lord. I'm going to be a nun. I was like, what? I was like, really? She just was here in Charlotte. I was like, oh, okay. She gave me her number. So this is the tricky part. So when I came home from the hospital and she told me to call her and talk to her, her name was Maria. I don't know her last name, but if she's watching this is little Cindy from the hospital. But my mother called back to the hospital because we couldn't get an answer. They told my mom there was no such person in the room with me.
Wow, is an angel.
I know, to this day, I am so true. I can never forget that.
There was an angel that visited you.
They said there was no one in her room. And my mom said, she had her roommate. Said she was in that room. They said, ma'am, she was in the room by herself. She said, no, she was not. She said, I seen her. Wow. No, the number, no, and her name, my mother has her name, Maria Blackwell or something. My mother searched everywhere for her. No such person. So I don't know.
Wow, what a miracle story. And so when you were standing on the high dive and they shook it, you went from the high dive to the concrete?
Yeah, so here's the high dive like this, and I'm bouncing on the end of it like this right here. Yeah. And over here's the concrete. So they shook the ladder, and they shook it, my whole body, like it flew backward. I flew backward.
From the high dive, so not even the low dive, way up high, you fell all the way to the ground. Oh my God.
Yeah, I fell backward, hit the concrete on my head, hit here, and hit my face. Yeah.
Wow, you are a miracle. The Lord has had his hand of favor on you for a long time, my dear.
He really, really had. That is just, I'm telling you, that was, and then I had the cancer. And then we even had a car wreck. A drunk driver hit us when we were little, Jill. I heard my mother just praying in the car. My dad was driving, and there was a drunk driver coming onward to us. And my mama was screaming, and my dad couldn't get away from him because he was so close. He hit his head on. So my mother hit her head, and she's bleeding everywhere. My dad busted both of his kneecaps, and he still got out of the car and carried us. My brother bit his tongue almost all the way off except for a little piece. And they were able to stitch it back. And my other brother got, I think he's got a black eye. And there was nothing happened to me at all. No.
Wow.
Nothing.
Now, is your mother and your father's passed away? You mentioned that.
Yes.
And what about your mom? Is she still with you?
No, she passed away. She had a congestive heart failure because she fell and crushed her back, and she kind of stayed bowed over, and she really couldn't have that circulation. She started building up a lot of fluid in her heart. Wow. So she stayed like at probably 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. Now,
and my dad passed away of lung cancer.
Now, tell us how and where you became a Christian. When did you invite Jesus into your heart?
So this right here, after everything that I went through in my life, I remember 8, 9, 10 years old, I'd always hear this voice talking to me. And then I would cover my head because I would think, I know that's God, but, God, I'm such a bad child. You know what I'm saying? I just never felt like a good little kid because of everything we went through. We were in poverty. And so, but, and then, a couple of years passed and I would still hear this voice talking to me. And I said, God, I know who that is, but that can't be who it is talking to me. He would always say Cynda, or say, I'm watching over you. I would hear those things. And so as I got probably about 25, maybe 24, 25 years old, after, because my daughter and my daughter's husband and we had dated and we broke up. So when we broke up, this guy had asked me to church. I said, oh, he's cute. I said, I'll go to church with him. He is handsome. So he comes and picks me up on Sunday morning, and I'm sitting on the pew of the church. And, I didn't know I went to a full gospel church. I'm sitting there going, Lord, have mercy, I'm going to get out of this door. I was scared half to death because they were clapping, raising hands, dancing. I grabbed a hold of that seat. I was like, oh my God. And but I came back the next week, and then I kept coming back. And I just gave my heart to God. I mean, it was about 3 months I gave my heart to the Lord. The Lord right there in the pew. I never went down to the altar. Right there in the pew, I just gave my heart to the Lord right there. And then I was baptized. But when I gave my heart to the Lord, Perry Stone came to preach a couple of weeks later. And he never laid hands on us or anything, but he just was speaking over my life and over all of us at the altar. And when I left, I've never been the same. I've never been the same, ever. I got baptized. When I got baptized, there was a big old gray streak going down my head. And I went and had a meeting with the pastor and asked him what he had in the water. I said, because what did you do to my head? And I said, because, with the water, I said, I said, I can't get this out. I said, I've even been to a beautician. She can't get it out. And he said, sweetie, there ain't nothing in that baptism thing that's going to do that to your hair. And I was like, okay, so I don't know. It had to grow out. But when I was baptized, I promise you, I had this whole piece right here was nothing but gray. And I was coming to bobby pins. I didn't know what it was. I was 24 years old.
Crowns of glory.
I promise. It's just like, it's always, it took me probably a year to get that, to grow out and get it cut off. But it's crazy, isn't it? But after that, so whenever I got married, and I felt like whenever I got married that I could just pray my husband, oh Lord, I'm going to pray him to the Lord. I'm a super Christian. I just thought I was going to die. That didn't work. So, and after we separated and divorced, I continued to go to church. I continued to stay in church. I had some mighty women of God, a mentor. Her name is Betty. She poured into me and prayed over me. She had a prayer meeting every Friday night that I went to, and the Holy Ghost was in that place, and the Holy Spirit moved on so many women, and we saw miracles, signs, and wonders. We saw women healed of cancer. We saw women that were asking for babies that couldn't get pregnant for years, that they conceived. It was so many things that I seen God do, and the more I seen, the more I wanted. The more I wanted to go to church, and so I was sitting at the swimming pool. I began managing the swimming pool after Paul and I got married. I began to manage a swimming pool in our neighborhood, and it was wonderful. I loved it. Got paid to lay out by the pool, and so I was reading. Is it utmost for his highest? Is that right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, I was reading that, and I was sitting there and had it laid out on the lounge chair. My daughter was in the water. She was like 13, 14 years old, and I heard Cynda, and I looked up around the pool. Looked up and looked back. I said, I thought somebody said my name, and I heard Cynda. I looked up. I said, what, Alex? She goes, I didn't call you Mama. I said, okay. I laid my head back down again to read again. I heard Cynda, I'm calling you into women's ministry. And I raised up and I stood still. I was like, huh? Said, you will have a microphone and you're going to preach the word of God to women. You're going to be in a pulpit behind a podium with the microphone. I want to use you to speak in other women's life of what I delivered you from. And I just stood there and I looked at my daughter. I said, I'll be right back. She was my I'll be right back. So I went out the gate, went into the bathroom, and the worst place there, I sat on the commode. I sat on the commode and started crying. And then here I am having this conversation. I'm like, God's got the wrong person. I know it's me he's talking to, but you can't use me, Lord. Oh my God, not me. Lord, you got the wrong person. Lord, I've never held a microphone. Lord, I've never taught anything. I'm like, God, you sure you got the right person? And Lord said, I chose you. And he never said anything else to me. That's it. And I just sat there and just kind of had a conversation with myself, and so I walked out and sat down. I said, maybe it's just something I just heard, it's okay. Maybe it's just me. So I'm at this prayer meeting with these women and I'm sitting in this chair 2 weeks later and the woman sitting there turns on this show and it's Beth Stevens. And she goes, who's going to be doing that right there with the microphone ministering to women? And, we're all just sitting there watching TV. And she goes, Cynda. I turned and looked and went, huh? She goes, God said, that's what you're going to do. I left. I just got up and left. And I was like, okay, I got to go. I went home and I was just awestruck. I called her back the next day. I said, we need to talk about this. Okay. She goes, God told me that you were going to minister to women. I was like, wow. So, and then I started going to the church that I go to now. And I come underneath this girl. Her name was Brandy, and she had a class. So she said, I'm having a conference. She said, I want to know if you want to open. I was like, huh? It's like, what? Me? I said, sure. Okay. So I opened up for her in a conference, and then it just kept going and just kept going. And then she had these conferences and I would open and close it for her. And then God told me I was going to host a conference. I hosted my first conference at Morning Star, and it was called Beauty for Ashes, Beauty for Ashes. And never had a conference in my life ever. There was 300 people showed up. And there was Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday night. It was 300 people showed up, and it cost me out of my pocket $500. Everything else was sponsored. It was like a $25,000 conference. I didn't have to pay any of it at all. Everything was donated, and people supported it, and people showed up. People showed up. It was amazing.
Wow.
It was amazing. And it's just been going like that. It's just, I mean, wow. I heard him call me, and he just said he wanted me to help women to overcome what he has helped me overcome, and that he would help them. And he told me to give them hope and to let him know that he loves them, that they aren't the things that the men that they're married to. And it's not every woman, and I'm not bashing men. And they're not the things that's being said about them, that regardless where they've been or what they've done or what they've been through, God loves them and he wants to help them. He wants to help them heal. That's what he told me. He wanted me to let them know and to help them with it.
Well, we are so aligned. It's just amazing because there's thousands of people on Facebook, followers that I have and you have. And it's funny how God just kept leading me to you for the last several months. And we had a pause I want to say why we had a pause, not meeting till now in a moment. But the Lord wakes me up, Cynda, with train whistles. And I'll share that with you off air. And he woke me up and said, Jill, you're to do a conference in Branson called Resilient Bravehearts for Such a Time as This. And in the play Esther, there's a theater here in Branson, Cynda, called Sight and Sound Theater. They do replications of biblical stories. And the plays are better than what you'd see on Broadway in New York or Chicago or LA. They're so unbelievable that people flock here from all over the world just to see these plays. And Esther's playing right now. And so people are coming to Branson to see Esther. And so the Lord said, for such a time as this, Jill, you need to do this conference. And I said, tell me, God, what it's supposed to look like. And he said, we are to invite, and it was weird, Cynda. He gave me this revelation that it was not only like the book of Esther, but Titus, that we as older women right now, for such a time as this, are called to mentor to tweens, teens, college girls, and young adults, because they're getting more and more and more lost in this world. And if we do not get on our knees right now and come before him and mentor these young girls, they will be lost forever. And that's the vision he's given me. And it was very prophetic. And so he said, so we need to do a conference where the speakers will talk on a topic, and ask the audience if they could relate to that topic, like body image. And then when they raise their hand, the speaker at the end is going to look at the audience and choose a young girl to come up for 5 minutes and share how they can relate to that, so that the older women peer-to-peer will share and the younger girls peer-to-peer. And then we'll do breakout sessions to give the girls space to be able to talk, because you go to conferences where there's speakers and speakers and speakers and no time to process. So I'm feeling God saying we need space for these young girls to talk.
Yes.
And then he's called us to come together, Cynda, on Sunday, and he wants me to invite the homeless women, the domestic violence women, and the recovered addicts, and make them the VIPs of the event. And he wants me to hire estheticians, pedicurists, manicurists to be the eunuchs, and we're going to surprise the forgotten population and bring them into the dressing room and give them mini makeovers for such a time as this, to present them before the King of Kings and throw them a banquet on Sunday. So it's a whole vision. Yeah. And so with everything that you've been doing, I just feel so aligned. So tell us, if you want, you went through some really tough times in the last few weeks. Do you want to share that, or is that too personal?
No, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, my husband just passed away. He passed away on March the 13th. It was, we had separated because the fact that he was an alcoholic. We had separated because of that. And so, but we have been talking. We have still been talking. I've been going down there and seeing him. And I felt like he had maybe got a wake-up call, or God has really been talking to him, and he would stop drinking. But the fact that he didn't, he was still drinking, and he found out he had cirrhosis of the liver. But, when I married him, Nancy, I just fell in love with him. I mean, I really did. I fell in love with him. I always thought it was because he was an alcoholic and I was just drawn to that, but I loved his personality. I had so much fun with him. I mean, it just felt like we had our souls had just intertwined, and it was like that for probably about 13 or 14 years. It was like that until the alcohol got him really good and things started changing. To this day, it's just, it was hard when we separated. I think he moved about 2 years ago. He moved in with his dad. It just got unbearable for me. But I watched what alcohol does to somebody. I watched that disease, which I prayed against for so many years, and wanted to know, how come, God, that I prayed so many years that he wasn't delivered from that, but that's not a question for me to ask the Lord, because we have our own we have free will, we do. And Paul knew people were praying for him, and he was battling it. So the more they prayed for him, I felt like the more he pushed himself away from me, the more prayer there was. And, but his daddy always accepted him like that. He did. His daddy accepted him until he was able to live with his dad, to see that he had this alcohol problem. And his dad started thinking, wow, he had more of an alcohol problem than I thought he did. But his dad, was really challenging for his dad being older, trying to help take care of him. So, but he, in September, in the hospital of September 2022, he had a doctor came in and told us that, he said, I gave him 6 months. And so we wanted to give him a liver transplant. So we went to Charleston. We were working really good with the doctor, and Paul worked really, really hard. He worked very, very hard to do everything he could do to keep himself healthy and get the fluid off of him. And he had been to the hospital. He'd been in the hospital more than he ever was even at home. He was in the hospital probably 80% of the time from September up until March. He would go in the hospital and then come home, and go in the hospital and come home, then go in the hospital and stay there for 10 days, and then come home for 2 and go back. He got to where he got a lot of fluid on his lungs, and he didn't want to go. It was like Sunday night. He passed away that Monday. It was like Sunday, the 21st of March. His dad said, come on, he's trying to get you up. I want you to go get get the fluid off of you. He said, I don't want to. He said, I don't want to go. He said, I just want to sleep. His dad said, well, in the morning, we're going. So that next morning, his dad walked in, and he was laying down on the bed, and he had actually went to sleep, and his oxygen got so low that he had a faint heartbeat. And he'd actually just started going to sleep, and he really didn't have any suffering. He just kind of laid down, was just tired. And the ambulance came in, tried to resuscitate him and everything. We took him to the hospital. He had a brain bleed, which couldn't be stopped. So I had to make the decision to take him off the respirator. And so I want to share this with you. And I know a lot of people don't believe in this. And I'm not saying there's anything to this, but this really touched my heart. My daughter brought it to my attention. So he was born. My husband was born. And I'll tell you why I believe there's something meaning to this. So my husband was born on 3/7/68. My husband passed away on 3/13/23. They came in at 3:00 and told me to take I need to take the respirator out. We took the respirator out, ventilator. Sorry, ventilator. We took that out at 3:03. He passed away at 3:30. He was in room 3. He was born at 3:33. So it's just, I'm sitting there thinking, I go, oh my gosh. And me and him was married
and 3 is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yes. And we were married in 2003. So, and here it is, he passed away in 23. And I'm just like, wow. I'm like, God, why? I was like, but to me, people said, what do you think? It means this. I said, what it tells me in my heart, that God had him from the day he was born to the day he died, that God had his hand on him, and he gave his heart to the Lord. In December, he completely surrendered to the Lord, and he wasn't on any medication. He was well aware of what he was doing. He said God spoke to him. He gave his heart to God. So he made everything right with the Lord. But that just let me know God had his hand on him the whole entire time. So that's what I take of it.
Amen.
Oh yeah. And it's just, but it now being when he passed away, from losing a spouse, it was like, I felt like the world stopped and I was the only one moving. But now I feel like I'm okay because I've had so much support, so many prayers, so many phone calls. People that know me just showed up at my house and putting stuff on my front porch, give me stuff in the mail, just coming to my work and just calling me all day long and just coming by and praying for me, and the hugs, and just it's unbelievable the support that I've had. The people that just right there with me.
I find it interesting, and tell me if you do, and then we got to come to a dead end here for a second. Okay. I find that maybe God found favor too. So the divorce never was finalized, correct?
So, we never was legally separated or anything. No, we were still legally married.
See, God found favor in this whole situation, that he still remains your husband even in the midst of all of this. So I'd love the audience to see your bio. So this is Cynda's bio and how you can reach her. It's got her website and her Facebook page that you can connect with her for ministry if you need her for speaking or any ways to reach out to Cynda. So I just know that God brought us together for a reason. I am so honored that I had an opportunity to get to hear your story. And like I said, we tried to connect a couple months ago, but you were going through so much with the loss of your beloved husband, and and pray up Cynda, everyone, with this. Even though it's been since March, it's just around the corner, and her daughter's been struggling as well. And just pray them up that the Lord will bring them peace and joy and serenity in the midst of the storm, because it takes a while. I myself, Cynda, lost my beloved sister and my beloved father 2 days apart in September of 2020. My sister was only 68, got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and only lived for 12 weeks. And my dad, who was 94, was so sad that he just died of a broken heart 2 days later. And I really believe that my father died so that he could dance with my sister in heaven. He was a Fred Astaire dance instructor in his youth, and I really think he just said, I'm not going to let my Gwenny Bush go to heaven without me, and he decided to go with her.
So, yeah. I'm so sorry. That's so close.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard on us. So, yeah. So I love you. I'm going to end now. But any closing words that you want to say to the audience? Any final words of comfort or joy that you want to give to the audience in closing?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me. I've been really looking forward to it. And I was so excited. I was like, wow. I said, I don't know what direction we're going to go in, but and I love the title. That's For Such a Time as This. And God, my prayers for you for for this beautiful event, this beautiful moment that I know it is what is it, a day or two, your conference you're having?
2 days. Mm-hmm.
And it seems like people's like 2 days, but it only seems like a moment goes by so fast. But prayers for that. And I pray that everybody's blessed and just everything falls in place, and that the Lord just move on these women, just wrap his arms around those women, because women need it. They really do. And especially what they've come from. Nobody even knows what we've been through. And thank you again for inviting me. But what I would have to give to anyone is, and I like what you put, the revival is now. It is. I feel like that is within me. That's what's happening. I feel like the woman that I have become, and I'm going to continue to build her as God shows me how he wants me to be built with the Holy Spirit, how he's going to do it. It's what he does. And I just hope that there's a lot of opportunities that I'll get to be able to minister, to help other women that's been through similarities that I have. That's just know that he told me that. He said, call upon me and I will answer thee and show thee great mighty things thou knowest not. That's my favorite scripture.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Connection Show. And thank you, Cynda. It's been an honor and a blessing to get to know you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Have a nice day, everyone.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
From the beginning of time, God has commissioned women from around the world to mentor, encourage, teach and train tweens, teens, college students, and young women to be courageous and fearless women of God. In 2023, Queen Esther's need to rise up to save our nation and the generations to come, receiving a crown of beauty for ashes, healing from uncertainty, being overwhelmed, the effect of social media, addictions, eating disorders, body image, busyness, isolation, loneliness, fear, anxiety, depression, bullying, hopelessness, and abuse. The time is now to become resilient, brave hearts for such a time as this. No longer be broken and become the best you can be. Learn from extraordinary women in breakout sessions. Hear speakers share on topics such as hope, health, healing, faith, love, joy, peace, purity, femininity, self-esteem, nutrition, healthy boundaries, leadership skills, career development. God has called older women to teach younger women that they are good enough and are wanted by a king who wants them to arise as resilient Queen Esthers and to live wisely, purely, and be good. Join us for 2 days at Yakov Theater in Branson, Missouri on Saturday, August 19th, 2023 and Sunday, August 20th, 2023 for Resilient Braveheart's Women Conference. For such a time as this, come in a day early to see Esther at Sight and Sound Theater.
Hi, I'm Jill Reynolds with Resilient Braveheart. For such a time as this, coming to Branson, Missouri, August 19th to 20th, 2023. We will be meeting at Yakov's Theater, and I'm so excited for the event. No longer broken and becoming the best you will be joining us at this event. It's for all women of all ages, from 12 years old to 100. You don't want to miss this event. Come to Branson and be with us for this amazing weekend of hope,
health and healing.
Hello, my name is Brenda Ringwood, and I'm the founder of the Becoming the Best You movement, #BTBY, and I'm going to be in Branson, Missouri, speaking and working with Jill Reynolds at Braveheart workshops in August 19th and 20th, in Branson, beautiful part of the country. But more importantly, this is a women's event. We women need to stick together. We need to encourage each other. We need to build each other up. We need to love on each other. We need to fellowship together. That's what we're going to do at this conference. We're going to love on you. So check us out. August 19th and 20th, Branson, Missouri at the Yakov Theater. Oh, what an amazing time this is going to be.
Hello, ladies. Hi, my name is Overseer D. Forbes. I want to talk to you all about being no longer broken. Listen, meet me there. It's August the 19th and the 20th. Ladies, you don't want to miss this. It's a place where you'll be safe, healed, and made whole. I will see you there.
Register now by going to braveheartworkshops.com.
Thank you for joining us on The Connection Show. Our show is made possible by your support. Please go to our website and click on the Affiliate Partners page now. You can support us either on Venmo or our Cash App today. We love our podcast guests and our social media subscribers. Our channels are made possible by you, our listeners. Please go to our website and go to our Contact Us page and click on all our social media pages. Make sure you click the bell on YouTube and subscribe, and the follow us button on Rumble. Our affiliate partners are featured on our show, and we thank you for supporting them and their products. Each of them have fabulous offerings with discounts when you mention Braveheart when you order. Please order today by going to braveheartworkshops.com and clicking on Affiliate Partners.